Hi there. Welcome to episode 4 of the Fast Bowling Workload Education Series. I'm Mel Tree and I'm joined by Henry Woodward and Angus Lelivre. Today we're going to be talking about workloads and how understanding and monitoring them effectively can significantly reduce your risk of getting injured. We will be focusing on what bowling looks like in season, where the emphasis should be on finding the balance between performance and recovery. In the last episode, we spoke about pre-season, aka the preparation period, which is used as a gradual build-up leading into a season so you're physically ready to cope with the loads. In this episode, we will move on to the slightly more complicated in-season period, which is all about balancing performance and recovery to allow the body, particularly bones, muscles, and tendons, to recover, adapt, and be ready for the next match or training session. You can see this region outlined in the green square. Recovery between spells, between training and matches, and after prolonged high-load periods are important to alleviate short-term fatigue and allow bones to adapt and rebuild. These are important injury prevention strategies to help maximize performance. Let's quickly revisit what we can actually modify when it comes to bowling loads. We spoke about this in episode 3 as well, but as a refresher, there are 3 areas that we can manipulate: how intense you bowl, how much you bowl, how often you bowl. These 3 points can be simplified to intensity, volume, and frequency. During the in-season period, generally the intensity of bowling stays up near 100%. So when we refer back to what we can modify, intensity drops off the list. This leaves us with volume, how much you bowl, indicated by balls bowled, and frequency, how often you bowl, number of bowling sessions in a week. So how often should you bowl in a season? As an under 19 male or female fast bowler, you should keep the numbers 4 and 2 in your head. A maximum of 4 days of bowling in a week, and a maximum of 2 days in a row. As an under 15, under 17 male or female fast bowler, you should keep the numbers 3 and 1 in your head. A maximum of 3 days of bowling in a week, and a maximum of 1 day in a row. Remember, this includes training and matches.
So how much should you be bowling in training? The in-season period obviously gets more complicated with training and matches on, so next we are going to provide recommendations for how much you bowl in training only. As per the Cricket Australia Junior Bowling Guidelines, as an under 19 bowler, you shouldn't bowl more than 6 overs in a spell at training, and as an under 15 to under 17 bowler, you shouldn't bowl more than 5 overs in a spell at training. How about in matches? Please take note of which column that applies to you, as this will differ based on age and gender. So how much altogether in a week? We can bring that all together for the how much to bowl and give you recommendations for how many balls to bowl per week in both training and matches in season. These are the total balls in a week across training and matches that you should be aiming to bowl. Again, take note of the column that applies to you. As explained in previous episodes, there is a dual risk of under-bowling and over-bowling. While we want to encourage you to gradually progress your bowling workloads as you get older to allow you to tolerate the increasing demands, we would also recommend you to be mindful of how many balls you bowl per week so that you don't compromise your performance or increase your risk of injury. So when should you take a deload from bowling? Due to the number of matches and different teams you play for in season and the amount of cricket happening, there may be periods where you bowl more than the recommendations allow. This is natural, so don't worry if this happens. Just make sure it doesn't happen too often. If it does happen, then something you can do is to take a deload week afterwards. Post multi-day championships would be an ideal time to take a deload. So what is a deload? A deload is a reduction in bowling workload to allow recovery. This can either mean a reduction in volume, intensity, frequency, or a complete rest from bowling. It is definitely worth seeking advice from your coach, physio, or S&C to make a decision on this, as it can be a case-by-case basis and context is required as every situation can be unique. Here are some frequently asked questions on deloads that we will address. When is it appropriate in season to take a deload? An example of this would be when you go over the balls per week total by a significant amount outlined in the how much slide. What should this look like across a season? While we recommend you take a deload after a significant increase above normal load, you should also try and make sure that you have a lighter week every 4 weeks. This might just mean 1 bowl during the week rather than 2, or fewer balls. Remember, you can modify your load with either volume, i.e. balls bowled, or frequency, which is the number of bowls in a week. Does a deload mean that I can't play at all? This point only applies if you are having a complete rest from bowling. Remember, a deload may just mean you have a lighter week rather than a complete week off. So in this case, you obviously can still play as a bowler. And finally, what if I can't do this because of important matches coming up? You are an integral part in this process and must be proactive in planning ahead. This may mean looking ahead to future weeks of cricket and seeing what training and matches you have coming up and then prioritising for them. We would recommend prioritising matches over training where you have to make a decision. This idea of a deload is exactly what we referred to in episode 2, so please go back and watch this if you haven't already, where we spoke about getting the balance right between Pac-Man and Bob the Builder for optimal bone health. As a reminder, Pac-Man represents osteoclasts, which are activated in response to load through the lumbar spine, and their primary role is bone resorption. If there is a significant jump in load or training requirements, Pac-Man will in turn respond by going into overdrive and rapidly eating away at bone. Bob, on the other hand, represents osteoblasts, and his role is to respond to Pac-Man's bone resorption by laying down new, stronger bone. With a deload, we are encouraging Bob to get to work.
So now that you have an idea of how often and how much you should be bowling in season, how do you bring these numbers together to prepare yourself for a multi-day championship? The reality is that during a championships, you could be bowling in up to 6 matches over a 10-day period. So you've got to prepare your body for the demands of that fixture. This will allow you to be able to withstand the increased load of a multi-day championships while maintaining your level of performance. This will mean that you need to identify when this spike will be in order to work back and plan. The graph on this slide visually shows you what an increase in bowling workload of an extended period of time looks like, as you can see from the 4-week average load, the blue line, and the 7-day load, the red line, are rising over the course of the season. However, it doesn't show you how to prepare for a multi-day championships, where the demand will be for you to bowl upwards of 120, 150, or maybe even 200 balls in a 7-day period. The question is, how do you make sure you are as prepared as possible? Some of you will remember wearing GPS units during nationals. This allows us to give you an idea of the physical demands placed on the average pace bowler at our national championships. So for 6 matches in a 10-day period, a male pace bowler could bowl anywhere between 180 and 250 balls. A female pace bowler could bowl anywhere between 120 and 200 balls. The most total distance we saw covered at the national championships over 10 days was 69 kilometres. The most running or jogging distance, which is the pace you run your 2 kilometre time trials at, most we saw there was 8.9 kilometres in a single player. The most high-speed running distance we saw, which is the pace you run in at as a pace bowler, was 5.9 kilometres, and the most all-out sprinting distance we saw was 2.3 kilometres. So what does it look like to be prepared versus underprepared for these figures? So let's look at a comparison of 2 athletes' training routines building up to a national championships. So first of all, athlete A, who's prepared, consistently bowling as an under 15 to under 17 player 3 times a week, or as an under 19 player 4 times a week. bowling an average of 120 to 200 balls a week across 4 weeks, depending on age and gender. Has taken a lighter deload week every 4 weeks. Has completed 2 gym sessions a week, completed 1 to 2 conditioning sessions a week, and 1 to 2 speed sessions. In comparison to athlete B, who's underprepared, inconsistently bowling, not bowling enough, an average of 60 to 90 balls a week in the lead up, has unplanned boom and bust periods, no running or conditioning sessions, no strength sessions, and no speed sessions. So in terms of what this actually looks like at our nationals, for athlete A, who's prepared, they don't get as sore as much between matches, don't feel as fatigued and can focus on performing their skills, are better able to engage and participate in team meetings, and can execute game plans on match day. Compared to the underprepared athlete B, who gets sore after the first 2 days of the tournament, perform well at the start but has a significant drop-off in skill execution due to fatigue and soreness, has a hard time focusing, engaging in team meetings, and difficulty recalling and executing game plans on match day. Which one would you want to be? This brings us on nicely to this slide. To be clear, it is your responsibility to take ownership, be self-sufficient, be self-aware, and understand your own workloads. The infographic on the right is a study done on young tennis players. It reports that players who were better at monitoring their own workloads had a significantly reduced risk of picking up an overuse injury. For example, a stress fracture. Players with low or even moderate self-monitoring scores were 4.6 times more likely to pick up an injury. We also have numerous examples of fast bowlers in the pathways who have not followed workload guidelines and subsequently suffered a lumbar bone stress injury. So by all means, seek advice and ask questions, but ultimately, this is a two-way conversation. You need to engage in this process for it to be effective. So some take-home points from this episode. Be the prepared athlete, know your recommended loads, build up your loads gradually, and avoid boom and bust periods. So to finish off, these are some junior bowling guidelines provided by Cricket Australia and include some frequently asked questions. So we'll leave these on screen for the remainder of the presentation to allow you to read through.